The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Good evening, you're with GB News, and the top story tonight. The BBC boss Tim Davie has faced an unprecedented grilling from MPs over the broadcaster's failure to label Hamas a terrorist organisation. Conservative MPs are understood to have become increasingly concerned over the BBC's coverage of the Israel-Hamas conflict. Today's meeting was requested by the 1922 committee, which represents Conservative backbenchers. Tory MP Jonathan Gullis spoke to GB News after the meeting, saying he was shocked that Tim Davie would not agree to calling Hamas terrorists because it may hurt some people's feelings.
To me, this is mind-boggling. Everyone knows that Hamas is a terrorist organisation. It's a prescribed terrorist organisation here in this country. Every other news agency, like the great GB News, also considers this to be a terrorist organisation. What on earth the Director General thinks is going on, I don't know, but he is so far out of touch with the people of this great country, and particularly the Jewish community, not just here but around the world. He's brought shame upon this institution and has made a case why now more than ever the British taxpayer should have to continue paying the telly tax.
Meanwhile, bringing you up to date with events in Israel itself, sirens have been sounding tonight in Tel Aviv after a barrage of Hamas rockets targeted the city tonight. GBC's news team on the ground, GB News' team on the ground, filmed as Israel's Iron Dome missile defence system tracked a number of incoming rockets. A short time after one defence system missile was launched, an explosion was seen in the southern outskirts of the city. Well, the authorities did confirm 4 people suffered minor injuries when the rocket landed. Israel, meanwhile, has reportedly agreed to delay its ground invasion and allow the US to place missile defence systems around their assets in the Middle East. Meanwhile, here, the Prime Minister is refusing to support calls for a ceasefire despite pressure from more than 80 MPs to do so. Instead, Rishi Sunak is backing what he's calling specific pauses in the conflict to allow for the safe delivery of aid to the territory. 5 British people are among more than 200 still being held hostage in Gaza. And regarding that aid, the Ministry of Defence has confirmed an RAF plane left the UK today carrying 21 tonnes of supplies, which include medical equipment and water filters. Now, in news away from Israel, and 3 people have been arrested on suspicion of criminal damage after London's Wellington Arch was vandalised. Just Stop Oil posted video of activists spraying orange paint on the Grade 1 listed structure, which is almost 200 years old. They then set off their orange flares. The stunt was part of the group's ongoing campaign demanding that the government stops granting new oil and gas licences. Politics, and Peter Bone has been suspended from the House of Commons for 6 weeks over bullying and sexual misconduct allegations. The Wellingborough MP, who denies the allegations, has already been expelled from the party. It means another by-election's looming for Rishi Sunak, as a recall petition will now be arranged. And lastly, GB News presenter Anne Diamond has been made an OBE at Buckingham Palace today. The journalist and presenter received the honour from His Majesty the King for her services to public health and charity. And the award recognised her campaigning efforts for a search into cot death following the death of her own son Sebastian from sudden infant death syndrome. She's called the moment a crowning achievement to everyone who helped her campaign. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Leo Kirsten. Joining me tonight to make an absolute mockery out of Thursday's newspapers are two of the most insightful comedians in this room, Paul Cox and Lewis Schaefer. How are you both doing?
Great, thanks, Leo. Ready to be insightful and interesting about the news.
Yeah.
How about you, Lewis?
I'm ready to try to be a comedian.
OK.
Give it a go, mate. Give it a go.
One day you'll get there, Lewis. I have faith.
Yeah.
I have faith. Anyway, let's have a look at Thursday's front pages. The Daily Mail leads with Labour tearing itself apart on Israel. The Guardian has fears of worsening humanitarian crisis in Gaza as fuel runs short. The Daily Express leads with where is the hope amidst shared grief? The Metro has blackmail sex cop had 210 girl victims. The Daily Mirror leads with Bulgar killer's parole bid in secret. And the Daily Star has mystic mugs. And those were your front pages. And let's have a closer look at those front pages, starting with tomorrow's Guardian, Paul.
Always good to read The Guardian, Leo. Fears of worsening humanitarian disaster in Gaza as fuel runs short. So this is relief efforts in Gaza will be forced to stop unless fuel supplies reach the besieged territory. The main UN agency working there has warned. I'm not sure The Guardian understands war, because this definitely by Israel is a ploy.
Yeah.
They've got a certain amount of control over the fuel supply into Gaza and into Palestine, and they're defending their territory, and they're well within their rights to do this. Can you imagine the Guardian reporting on World War II with a sympathetic view on the Germans, for instance, and the Nazis? It just would be unheard of.
And complaining that Dresden was getting bombed.
Yeah, oh, those poor Dresden. Well, and to be fair, this is why they'll always have a case, because none of us thought that the Dresden citizens of Dresden deserved to be bombed in that way. But, you know, it's just part of war, isn't it, unfortunately? The thing that angers me the most about this story is that they still insist. They still insist. Below a picture of mourning Israeli women, it says murdered by Hamas militants.
Yeah.
And I can't get my head around how we're still calling them militants when they are a prescribed, UK law prescribed, terrorist group.
Well, I think it's only leftists that call them militants. The sort of people who will probably have a poster next to Che Guevara on their wall of these terrorists. I mean, Lewis, are you as bloodthirsty and cynical as Paul?
I mean, the thing is horrible. You can't make light about it. But at the end of the day, there's 200 hostages that are in Gaza, and the first step would be for maybe to release the hostages, and then we could talk. There's a place called Masada in Israel where the Jews held out against the Romans, and the Romans basically did the same thing. They blocked all of the entry points and the water and everything, and to get the Jews to give up. And the Jews didn't give up; they committed suicide. And I guess that's. What I want to say is, it's a horrible situation.
Yeah, but the fuel is also, I mean, it's not just used by hospitals. In fact, that's probably, they're probably further down the list in terms of priorities for Hamas than Hamas's tunnel network, which is, I mean, it's hundreds of kilometres of tunnel. They're hiding in the tunnels, and they have to have ventilation systems powered by this fuel to keep the air circulating through the tunnels, or they run out of air and they have to come out of the tunnels when the IDF can shoot them. And the IDF is, you know, this is almost a way of forcing them out of the tunnels, I guess. The
idea that Hamas are looking after Palestinians is the same as saying the farmer is looking after turkeys in December.
Yeah.
They're not looking after anyone. They're looking after themselves and their own self-preservation, and they consider Palestinian citizens as collateral damage in the same way that perhaps an Israeli bomb does.
Yep. I think we make a mistake when we disassociate Hamas from the Palestinian people, or even Hezbollah from is that Hamas speaks for a lot of Palestinians. It's not like there's only, like after World War II ended, you thought it was only maybe 5 or 10 Nazis. You know what I mean? The whole country became Nazis. I'm not saying Hamas are Nazis. But the people.
I'd say they're, you know, arguably in their outlook, in their stated intent, you know, they're just as extreme.
But the people feel that they're doing what's necessary to beat the Israelis. to beat the Jews. They're doing what's necessary. So,
OK. You've run out of words, so let's move on to the Daily Mail now, Lewis.
The Daily Mail is that this is the same story, not the same story, but it comes home. Labour tearing itself apart on Israel, and basically Starmer at Prime Minister's questions today didn't mention anything about Israel, and he basically is coming down as best as he can in the middle, which is not good enough for the people who support for the Palestinians, for Hamas.
And Muslim MPs. Labour's got quite a few Muslim MPs who are
right, and a lot of councillors, and so basically they're saying to Starmer that. We're going to go. I don't know what they're saying to Starmer.
Well, thanks for doing your research, Lewis. Paul, did you read this story? Could you sum it up without sounding like you're having some sort of medical?
The thing about this story is the man at the top doesn't know himself what he believes. You just go back 3 years and he was supporting Corbyn's bid to become Prime Minister, and he was supporting everything that Corbyn said. I know this feels like old ground, but it's really important for the context. Keir Starmer doesn't know himself what he believes, so what he's trying to do is play a game here where he's trying to please everybody, and that never works.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. I mean, I'm a centrist myself. I often get caught in the middle, but on big subjects, you have to know what the people, the voters, have to know what you think.
But I mean, this is a problem for the Labour Party because, I mean, the Muslim vote, and there's a lot of Muslims in the UK, I think 4 or 6 million, I can't remember how many, and 85% of British Muslims voted for Jeremy Corbyn's Labour Party, which is a huge proportion.
Well, he was very anti-Israel.
Yeah, he was. I mean, obviously, I'm not saying that's why, but it probably didn't put a lot of them off. But yeah, so under Jeremy Corbyn, that was a huge block for Labour, and it's replaced the sort of white working class vote in post-industrial towns in the north. And places like that. So this is a big deal for Labour. This is tearing apart what the Labour Party's been for the last few years.
I think Paul is wrong. Sometimes it does work. I think with what's his name, Blair, Tony Blair. He promised everything and he wasn't caught out. But in this case, he's caught out. Eventually, there becomes a subject where we need to know what exactly you're thinking.
Right. You can't focus group your way out of this one.
Yeah.
Here.
You can't just smile. I'll tell you what we're going to do later, and then the election comes and everything's all right. So he's being caught out, and he's going to have to decide what side he's on.
Yeah.
And my impression is that if he sides with the pro-Gaza people, he's going to lose, or maybe I'm wrong.
He'll alienate a lot of middle England, middle Britain, which they're the people who need to vote for him.
And those are the people who are moving in his direction. They're moving towards the Labour Party in the same way that they moved towards Tony Blair. They just said, well, he's not as bad as I thought he was going to be. Everything's going to be okay. And if he supported Gaza and what's going on in Gaza, which was one of the most atrocious situations ever.
But maybe this this uproar against him from fringes, from the sort of far left of the party, will actually play into his hands and make him seem more palatable to the centrists. Anyway, moving on, what have the Telegraph got on the front page, Paul?
Well, there's a couple of things going on here of interest. Dangerous AI may pose existential threat to humanity, says Rishi Sunak. So this is ahead of the flagship AI summit. PM to stress the need to be honest about the risks posed by the nascent.
I hear this every week, and I've yet to be killed by a laptop. So what's the other story on?
So yeah, that's a good point. Farage bank boss data rules and must. Sorry, Farage bank boss broke data rules and must not get £10 million payout. So this is the fact that the boss at Coutts, Alison Rose, is looking down the barrel of a £10 million payout, which is not entirely unusual if you leave a huge job like that. But it is unusual when you've quite clearly broken the law in some way and you've thrown someone under the bus and pretend it didn't happen and then been caught out and gone, oh, I'm really sorry. I'm a £10 million now, please. That's a problem.
Yeah, Lewis, anytime I've been fired from a job, and I'm sure you've been fired from a few as well.
No doubt.
I've not been like, oh, so now that I've been fired, now I've been forced to stand down because of my illegal activity. Can I get £10 million, please?
Well, I've tried that. I actually keep track of the times I haven't been fired from a job. I'm waiting to be fired from here. The guy, you know what? Farage, I was thinking about who I really like at this station.
Yeah.
And I like Nigel Farage. Farage. Maybe I shouldn't say that.
I think you're allowed to say nice things.
He's totally right. And a lesson needs to be made for this woman for what she did, to make sure that they don't do it again and they're not rewarded.
There are still people out there who don't believe this actually took place. They don't believe there was any debanking, and they're using the fact that it's Nigel Farage as a mask. They're saying, of course it's Nigel Farage, of course it didn't happen. Absolute nonsense.
And we call those people Guardian readers. Anyway, finishing this section with the Daily Star, Lewis. Let's quickly bosh through
Well, this is the big news, is that there's a woman her name is Maggie Adarin Pocock. She says that astrology isn't, she's a scientist, she says that astrology isn't valuable. But the truth is, historically, astrology was valuable when the planets were being put into shape after Mars and Earth broke off from Saturn, and after Venus became a comet and then became in the position, and and it meant a lot what month of the year you were born. It depends when the planets were interacting with each other, and there were some months when bad stuff was happening in the sky. You could look it up, Velikovsky.
Literally no idea what any of that meant. Anyway, that's the front pages, utterly done. Join us in a few minutes for Met Police misconduct, Oxford University misconduct, and the Guardian newspaper misconduct. The holy triumvirate. See you there.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie, second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Leo Kearse, and I'm still here with Paul Cox and Louis Schaefer. And The Guardian now and a black couple are furious about an improper stop and search by the police On the plus side, it could have been worse. It could have been American police, Lewis.
Oh, stop and search. If we moved on from that, okay. Well, this is a fantastic story because it's like every single day in policing everywhere around the world. Met officers fired for gross misconduct finding over stop and search of black athletes. The police up there in Maida Vale stopped a guy driving a Mercedes and two black people and then they lied about it. They lied why they stopped the guy. And according to this ruling, they said they didn't stop the guy because they smelled weed in their car because they were two athletes.
Yes, they get drug tested, so there's no way they'd be smoking weed.
Right.
I mean, walking through London, you do smell weed quite a lot. I don't know if it could have come from a house nearby or something like that.
It could have been, but at the end of the day, here's two. This is the police. I mean, I've had some dealings with the police, and
I believe you.
I have just recently, and they lie. They lie.
Conclusive.
These people were trying to make a case and saying they were stopped for being black, which they might have been. It's probably they were. I've never been stopped for being white, but they might have been.
Well, I would say that that's conjecture. I'd say it's fashionable conjecture at the moment. I'm not saying that it's impossible. I mean, smelling weed in London is not impossible for a start. Did they know they were black? I mean, they were in Maida Vale. I think that's important to point out. They weren't in an area well known for criminality, shall we say. I think it's difficult to know for sure whether those police officers knew when they stopped that car there were two black people in there. They certainly knew from that
car
point
not
on.
Windows.
I'm not suggesting that, Leo, sorry, but trying desperately to keep a straight face. I think this can only be an assumption, however. There were a couple of things going on here, because the panel did acquit the officers of gross misconduct over their decision to stop the car the athletes are in and to handcuff them. So they were saying the way they went about the arrest wasn't wrong, and that was fine. Right. So the assumption is all around whether they lied, which is proven. This is proven that they did. Yeah. But even bigger assumption that they were black. And I don't know how we can prove that those officers thought that they were black when they pulled them over.
I'll bring you back to the concept of looking through a window and seeing someone's face, Paul.
But you know, when you pull these people over, do you get that opportunity? What I'm trying to do here, without sounding racist in any way, is there's obviously two sides to this. These guys have lost their careers. We've got a policing shortage. So do we want to be chucking away good police officers? The argument is, are these good police officers?
No, I mean, I worked as a criminal intelligence analyst, and young black men are overrepresented as perpetrators of a lot of crimes. So they are overrepresented in stop and search statistics as well. But I mean, if you stop a couple, this is a couple with a baby in the car, then that's not. Yeah. They're not overrepresented in any statistics. Regardless of.
But the point is, why were they being stopped? Why should anyone be stopped in this country? They know where people live. If they're looking for them, they'll look for them. Just because a guy's driving by, cops are allowed to stop people?
I've only ever been pulled over 3 times, and all 3 times I've been driving back from GBN. Yeah. Because it's late at night. And
they've got nothing to do, and they should mind their own business. Were you breaking the law? If you were speeding, they should be able to pull you over. If you were driving erratically, you should be pulled over. But just for being a random citizen, I'm totally against it. What kind of police state is this? Right. It's the same thing in America.
And this is the start of Lewis's run for mayor. Yeah. Moving on, we've got the Mail now, and the conflict in Israel has spread to university campuses in the UK, Paul.
Yeah, isn't it just? The Israel-Hamas war has sparked a wave of UK campus cancel culture, it says in the Mail. Universities axe lecturers and events due to sensitivities around Gaza, while Jewish students are abused. And Oxford Union calls for an intifada until victory. Intifada, I believe, is an Arabic word. I've not heard it or read it before today. Used in Palestine, means to shake off. It's a war calling, essentially. It's a war calling. And Oxford University and College Union sparked a backlash after its members planned to debate a motion calling for a mass uprising until victory against Israel. So I think what we've got here, we've got 2 things going on. We've got these very, very harrowing events of which 2 groups of innocent citizens are being attacked. whatever the context is, that's what's happening. However, so I therefore understand the emotiveness of this. The fact that campuses, particularly like Oxford and university students, are falling down on one side, to me, is a clear indication that identity politics and the ideology around it has gone way too far. Yeah. They see everything, even terrorists, as oppressed just on the basis of them being brown or where they're from.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. And I mean, Lewis, do you think this is cancel culture gone too far? Or I mean, some of these things, they say Cambridge's Operatic Society cancelled upcoming performances of Handel's all over the supposed striking parallels it had with the ongoing war in Gaza. I mean, I don't think what's happening in Gaza is quite as bad as student opera.
It is a cancer. It's what it is it's silo mentality. Is that on one side is Team World, and Team World and Team Palestine goes into Team World, so people have to believe this. So and they've been trained, they know that Palestine is what Team World supports, and they know that Team Britain supports Israel because we believe in ethno-states.
But if you extrapolate what Hamas want to its final conclusion, you get death to all Jews.
Well, you get to death to everybody in the world and the establishment of Islamic
if you are
caliphate
supporting
across the world.
Hamas in any way, that's what you're supporting.
Yeah, well, maybe they need a taste of it. Moving on, we've got The Guardian now, and it looks like the government will finally be deporting some people, but only if they've been anti-Semitic, Lewis.
Yeah. I don't believe that. Visitors to the UK who incite anti-Semitism will be removed, says Minister. And Robert Jenrick, he's the UK Immigration Minister, he says that if you incite anti-Semitism, you're going to be sent away. And already that a few cases, they're doing this already. But this is the same thing we heard about, like the small boats, about all the immigration issues. This guy has got no power and nothing is going to be done. So this is totally
a non-story.
I don't think this is a non-story. This is
available on my website.
This is going to possibly... Are you really selling those?
Selling these on my website.
I mean, we're breaching broadcasting rules by you flogging those mugs. This is not the shopping channel. But I mean, this could help subdue some of the more vicious anti-Semitic elements of protest, surely, Paul.
Yeah, it feels like I'm in a partial agreement with Mr. Schaefer there. It does feel soundbitey. So it does sound to me as if Robert Jenrick is saying the sort of things he thinks people want to hear him say. And I'm not a fan of compelled speech. It applies to all types of speech. So I don't like being told, or anybody being told, the types of words that they should use.
I told them to say that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. However, what I do uphold is British values and the peace of British values. So if you are here within our societal community, we would like it to be peaceful. Yeah. So what I would suggest is, it doesn't matter where you're coming from, even if it's you, Lewis, that it should be peaceful in some way.
Why don't you mind your own business about my immigration status?
We've got The Telegraph now, and Japan's fertility crisis is one of the worst in the world, but it's going to get a little extra help by letting trans people have children, Paul.
That's a good point. Forcing people to be sterilised to change gender is unlawful, Japan's Supreme Court rules. Let's give a bit of context to this. So Japan's Supreme Court has ruled that a law obliging transgender people to undergo sterilisation surgery to officially change their gender is cruel and unconstitutional. However...
And what also seems sort of unnecessary, because a lot of transgender treatment, the hormones, the puberty blockers and the surgery render you sterile.
The surgery, no, he misstated it. It isn't castration. It's the surgery that causes castration. So what the Japanese are saying is, what they used to say was, you want to be a woman? Show a little commitment. You know, have the surgery, cut your whatever it is, cut, and then we'll let you be a woman. But people were complaining. They're saying, why are you making me go through this when I just want to wear a dress?
Look at some of the other conditions. And just to reiterate to everybody out there, I'll just read the words in here. These I didn't write them. Several other conditions for official recognition of changed gender still remain, including you must be unmarried, you must not have any children, and you must be diagnosed with gender dysphoria. So it's stipulating that anyone who's transgender must also be diagnosed as having gender dysphoria.
Right, interesting. And must not be married, must not have children.
No.
They'll actually stop you transitioning.
You might as well be sterilised.
Yeah, OK.
You've got body
congratulations.
dysmorphia.
Congratulations, you've made it halfway, but the best is still to come. We've got Coogan dissing monarchists, a rugby player dissing white people, and the... Oh, we've done that one. See you in a couple of minutes.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these 3.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners. We've got the Telegraph now, and Steve Coogan is becoming an even more cringeworthy left-wing version of Alan Partridge, Lewis.
No, he is not.
Yes, he is.
No, I'm going to prove to you that he's not. And I'm no great big Steve Coogan fan. I like Steve Coogan. He gave me work back in like 2000.
Oh, that's what this is all about.
In 2001, in a program called Brain Candy on Baby Cow Productions. Brain Candy, look it up. I did 13 episodes. I made a ton of money, and my wife didn't divorce me that month. Fans of the royal family are flag-waving idiots, quote unquote, says Steve Coogan. And according to the Telegraph, fans of the royal family are flag-waving idiots, Steve Coogan has said. That's what the Telegraph says, but that's not what Steve Coogan says.
What did he say?
Steve Coogan said most people who are into the royal family are flag-waving people who I think are kind of idiots because they support a power structure that keeps a foot on the throats of working class people, and I'm not really keen on that type of people.
That's even worse.
No, it isn't.
It's all sort of, he's trying to dress it up in this sort of verbose intellectualism. He sounds like a sixth former.
I don't think he did, because he didn't say that. He said some had kind of maybe wasn't being super. Listen, I think the royal family is the worst thing about this country.
Really?
The worst thing.
Man.
I don't care. I'm sorry. I think it's the worst thing. But he didn't say that.
What about Prince Andrew?
Believe it or not,
wonderful entertainment that he brought us on Newsnight.
He's probably the best thing about the royal family. He's the most interesting.
I disagree with him on this. I mean, he's trying to represent working class people, which I find difficult to take, really. I don't think he in any way relates any longer. And perhaps he did in the past, but he certainly doesn't now. And the idea that getting rid of the royal family would just solve the whole working class problem is a complete misnomer. Have you seen America? I mean, it's like 300 million people, of which 200 million people of them live on the street. It's madness.
Boo.
I'm not picking on America because they're American. I'm picking on America because Steve Coogan here is making a point that the royal family have got their...
Paul Cox. Boo, Paul Cox. Boo, Paul Cox.
I'd like to make a complaint. No, I don't believe what he's saying. I mean, I'm a royalist, and that's not why I don't believe it. But I don't believe that they've got their foot on our throats. Perhaps there's an argument that the structure has, but it's not like the royals lead the structure in any way, shape or form. It's Mr Starmer and it's Mr Sunak. These people are all the same, just in different coloured ties.
That's what they have you convinced, Paul. At the end of the day, everything has to go through those people, and those people stop your children and my children from reaching the toppest thing.
No, I don't think that's true. I mean, the royal family in this country, they're hardly emblematic of the class system. If anything, the upper classes in this country look down on the royal family as being in poverty.
Well, and the other thing, he is basically in cahoots with Team World. He stopped fighting for Britain. Something we need, if you're going to have a royal family of Britain, have somebody who's going to fight for this island.
OK, we're moving on. We've got the Telegraph now, and the BBC seem to have taken the current trend for turning white characters black a bit too far, Paul.
Yeah, BBC plaque celebrating earliest Black Britain removed because she was from Cyprus. the sign honouring 1,800-year-old remains of Beachy Head Lady, a female said to be of African origin. And it turns out this expert has said that it no longer is. And this is just yet another example. Well, it's a couple of example of a couple of things. But the first thing is that an expert that's incorrect. And when are we just going to replace the word expert with blagger with the right opinions? I mean,
so we've got a picture here.
See, look, Cypriot there.
That's not the real thing. That's
the plaque that was...
No, it's not the real... That was a photograph from 2,000 years ago.
This is the same thing that happened in America, because America is a multinational, multicultural country.
Yeah.
And I remember every year they used to drag out the one Jewish guy who was living in America during the time of the Revolution and what role he played, which is, I think he basically loaned Benjamin Franklin 50 pounds. Just something nothing. And I think they had 50 pounds back then. They didn't have... So this is I think they mean well. They want to get everybody involved in the country. They want to say, look, we got black people here.
Yeah,
we're black people.
It's mean-spirited of me, but isn't it just funny at the time? This is the sort of thing that's happening all the time.
And also, this is history. I mean, this isn't just taking somebody from a much-loved, drama or, Snow White or something like that and making them their ethnicity Nigerian. This is something completely different. This is actual history, and they're blackwashing it. They're saying somebody was black who wasn't black, who was European.
It's wishful thinking, right? And we see it all over the place.
Yeah, well, you say wishful. I'd say it's more hateful.
But you know what? This thing that they said the person was from Cyprus, and there's lots of Cypriots in the country.
It was very warm here 2,000 years ago, a lot warmer than now. I mean, you wouldn't believe it reading The Guardian, but it was.
And let me just say this: the person who was fronted in a 2016 Black and British series, David Olusoga, actually did a TV show with me. We went radio show.
Right. Okay. Well, moving on. We've got the Mail reporting on a rugby race round now, and I've heard people use this phrase to describe me. I'm relieved to learn they must have been talking Afrikaans all the time. Lewis.
Yes, I don't know what I can say, what I'm allowed to say.
You can read out that headline.
I can read it. What a cunt! South African.
I maybe wouldn't have read it like that.
What a cunt! What a cunt! I can't pronounce it. What a cunt!
All right, we've done that bit.
South African rugby star speaks in Afrikaans and appears to make light of Banji. I can't pronounce it. Basically. Can I just try to make my best to read this story?
Yes.
There's this guy, Bonji, he plays for South Africa. He called Tim Curry, not the guy from Rocky Horror Picture Show, but Tim Curry, the England rugby player, a white next Tuesday, whatever.
The worst one.
The worst one. And he's not being punished. And the guy actually, Tim Curry, went to the ref and said, hey, if this guy calls me that, what do I do? And the ref says, don't do anything. You can't do anything. We're not going to uphold it. So don't let it happen. The truth, rugby, for those people who don't know, I think it's a sport.
Yeah.
Is it a sport?
It is a sport. It's a rather rough sport as well for...
I just need to add some context for anybody listening on the radio. Lewis was reading out an Afrikaans phrase that means which side, rather than
and it is
vernacular,
pronounced.
the Glaswegian. It just sounds like he's swearing.
Yeah,
saying some bad
I wasn't swearing. You said it was okay to whatever it is.
I would have read it more Afrikaans.
I would have given it an accent at least. Yeah. You just sounded like an East End villain.
Vatakant. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Don't say it anymore.
I don't speak South African Paul.
Afrikaans.
Whatever that is.
I think that's the least of our worries.
OK, The Guardian now, and protests are planned at the next big Scientology meetup, otherwise known as Tom Cruise's latest movie premiere, Paul.
Oh, my goodness, yeah. Do you know what? I'll tell it in a minute. Of protesters planning action outside Scientology's UK headquarters during its greatest gathering. So ex-members say action, expected to be the largest in years, will send a message that abuse must stop. But Scientology says protest is harassment. Now, I think this is just a sign of how mental everything is, because we have all forgotten how mental Scientology is. In amongst all the mental array of mentalness that's going on at the moment, we still have a religion invented by a bloke called Ron, and there are millions and millions and millions of people who believe in this stuff.
Now, Paul, I've got to stop you, because I know, we've all lost a bit of trust in it because of vaccines, but I think science still has a role to play in society.
Yeah, did I say? But this is Scientology.
That's the study of science.
Yeah. So it makes sense.
Is it?
And every religion hasn't been created by one crazy guy. Every religion. What is Christianity? Named after this one guy. And Judaism, there was a guy who went up to a mountain or whatever. The whole thing is a mess. The whole thing is a mess.
Do you know what? We could solve all the wars now just by agreeing that.
Yeah, well, agree with me. I know what's going on.
But Lewis, do you think they're going to get away with this protest? Because, Scientologists are notoriously litigious.
Well, I think they are, because I've been watching a lot of Scientology videos lately, and it seems like people are not that happy with Scientology. It's crumbling on all things. Yeah, it's crumbling on all things, and it's like 1 or 2 generations past the founder, and they're not going to be. I don't know. From what I don't know anything about Scientology.
But you're an actor. You're an American actor. You must be a Scientologist.
Yeah. Well, I have appeared in some of Tom Cruise's films.
Well, moving on, we've got The Telegraph now, and the BBC are indoctrinating children with dangerous racist ideology. Hey, it's not the worst thing the BBC's done to kids, Lewis.
Yeah, no, this is BBC News Round, which is under fire for teaching, quote-unquote, white privilege to kids, and it's on a website, so it isn't really on TV, but it's the BBC, and the BBC has websites, and they got magazines, they got too much stuff going on, and this woman, who I think I've met, because she's been on Free Speech Nation, which is a fantastic program on Sunday, says she's the leader of a campaign called Don't Divide Us, and her name is Dr. Alka Segal Cuthbert. And she says basically they're teaching critical race theory, they're teaching political partisan stuff. The BBC, it's so unbelievably left-wing. It's all about racism, and it's all about white people being bad. And this is just one more reason why the BBC doesn't need to be defunded. It needs to be sold, period.
Who do you think would buy it?
Well, then give it away.
I'll have it.
I mean, Paul, what do you make of this? I mean, it seems shocking that people are forced to pay for the BBC, and then the BBC is turning around and pushing out this dangerous racist ideology.
Yes, crazy. I mean, do you remember when people used to say there were fairies at the bottom of the garden? I think the term white privilege has become like the fairies at the bottom of the garden.
Yeah.
No one's ever seen it, and the only people that have are like the kid in Sixth Sense or some crazy person. It doesn't, to my mind, as a working-class white British bloke, it doesn't exist. It's never been in my favour. Now, you will, if you're on the other side of this argument, say it's systemic, it's obviously worked in my favour, but you should see the estate I come from. Some people still live underground or in shopping trolleys. Yeah. There is no privilege there whatsoever. So the fact that the BBC, particularly at that level, at that age group, think that it's appropriate to push this ideology, to me, is bonkers.
But you know what? You know what? Maybe, Paul, the fact you haven't come very far
I made it all the way to London.
Is an indication that you are a failure. That you should have come.
I didn't get any Paul privilege. I got Paul failure.
Look, I've come tremendously far.
I can't believe Lewis Schaefer is giving career advice. This is ridiculous. Anyway, we've got one more section to go with yet another reason to take Viagra, no nookie for Generation Z, and sexy accents. It's not what you'd expect. See you in a couple of minutes.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie, second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GBNews.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious?
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows,
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. We've got the mirror now, and if you can't remember the last time you had an erection, Viagra might help in 2 ways, Paul.
Taking Viagra, the positive potato. Taking Viagra may shrink risk of getting Alzheimer's disease by 60%, new study shows. It's hard to believe, Leo. A breakthrough has been found in the fight against... I can't believe I did that. In the fight against Alzheimer's disease, with new studies showing that people may reduce their risk by 60%. of the illness simply by taking Viagra. Now, this was a study undertaken by Mount Sinai Medical Center in New York. So over to Lewis to discredit them.
What about me? What about you discussing it? This is one of those stories. I don't understand it really, but I'm
That's because you haven't had your Viagra.
you know something? What Viagra does is it raises nitrous oxide, which is good, and it
makes blood pump around your body. Is that right?
It relaxes it so that blood is able. It lowers your blood pressure. You could take it as a blood pressure pill. It was originally invented as heart medication, right? And then they found out that what it did. I think they've made a leap. They've made a leap between it stopping one particular enzyme, which has a minor effect on Alzheimer's, and what the actual cause of Alzheimer's, which is sugar.
But so this isn't anything to do with the blood, just the increased blood flow to the brain?
Yeah, so that in and of itself could help it slightly.
You think it's because you don't want to eat a Mars bar because you've got an erection?
Well, the question was, do we eat before sex? And I'm planning on having sex next year, so I'm going to...
We've got the Times now with the news that Generation Z want to return to traditional values. This is almost heartwarming, Lewis.
Well, it's not really, but it says U.S. study. It was a study done at the University College of Los Angeles, but I don't know where that is. And it said that under 25,
Los Angeles.
And I lived in LA for a year. Can I tell you what shows I was anyway, that people who were young would rather watch platonic friendships, normal friendships with other guys, than sex scenes or romance. It's called less sex, more no-mance. No-mance, like romance, is what Gen Zs want from TV. And basically, and they don't know what the reason is, but I know the reason. The reason is if you talk to a girl and she doesn't like you, she gets the ick. That's a crime in this country, is it not?
Of course, in this generation. And also, they all live with their parents, so nobody wants that coming on the screen when you've got to sit, next to your mum and dad.
No, they don't. They don't sit next to their mums and dad. They've got their own screens. Do you think they watch with their kids?
Yes, it's not just like one 14-inch TV in the living room anymore.
How old are you?
Can you all imagine? Just all sat around at home watching something. Of course, Gen Z want less sex. I mean, has a generation ever been exposed to sex more than Generation Z? It's just freely available. Yeah. All of us used to have to hunt in the woods under a bush and hope that some dirty old tramp had left something there of interest. But they've got access. They've got access to.
That's an interesting insight.
They've got access to so much sex, and everything's sexualised, overly sexualised. All the music is. If you listen to music from the 80s and 90s, it seems so much more platonic as they're asking for now. It seems so much more innocent. It relied on innuendo.
And sex is available on literally every device.
Yeah, just watching sex. That's not. I got news for you. That's not real sex. That's porn. That's naked. But that's not actually. People today are not having sex. They're not having sex, and they're not having children. And we've got wars to fight, and we need kids. And this is the death of love. And this is my calendar coming up here that is now available for reprint. We're reprinting it for next year. It's 2028. It's about the death. The death of 2024.
That's a cheery message.
The death of love. Women are horrible.
I respect a man with the confidence to make a calendar in Microsoft Paint. That's impressive, Lewis. Anyway, we've got the Mirror now, and we all hate those extra charges at the end of a restaurant bill, but this one takes the biscuit, Paul.
It does a bit. It does a bit. Parents outraged after restaurant adds £41, or $50 in this case, to fine on bill for bad parenting. So this is one restaurant, which is not named in this whole article, by the way. I keep reading it, and it's still not named in there. One restaurant has come under fire for taking things a little too far after adding an extra charge to parents who fail to control their children. So on the face of it, you think, OK, that's not too bad. You want people to control their children in a restaurant. It all depends on the type of restaurant, of course. If it's a family-friendly restaurant, we've got to suck it up. However, I think this is probably...
They probably got a knife and fork.
Well, yeah.
We don't need to suck it up.
Well, I grew up in Portsmouth, mate. We didn't have a knife and fork. So, I mean, the point of this is the guy is just freewheeling and adding fines, walking up to people, genuinely walking up to people and going, I don't think you've been looking after your kids particularly well. That's a $50 fine.
Yeah, I mean, this seems ridiculous. $41 A $41 fine for... I mean, you've got kids, Lewis. Would you be outraged if they tacked on this fine?
No, because my kids are horrible, and they were horrible. But
your kids are very nice.
No. For the sake of the show, why kill the show? Why kill the show? Anyway, they're not even my kids. They're the mother's kids. I lost control of them. Anyway, the point is Paul always believes this stuff. He's like, you're the most naive person in the entire world. There's like no questioning. This is such a non-story.
You think
Such
it's
a non-story.
Okay, well, we've got the Times now with a survey that definitely did not include the confirmed carnivore Lewis Schaefer.
No, it didn't, but who knows what the story is. This is the Times.
What are you going to tell
me? I'm telling you. I read all these stories, Leo. You give the impression that
you read them. I just want you to read them out.
Okay, well, why don't you read them out? I'm not a presenter. I don't want to present these stories. I want to just be asked my opinion anyway, because presenting it is work. Anyway, meat eating drops to lowest point since 1970. This is according to the Times. It says that meat eating, and by what they mean meat, they mean like red meat, like pork and beef and lamb, is down 26% in a decade. But the truth is why this story was written. It's another non-story. Nonetheless, experts want more people to give up meat to help the planet. Like, just state it as a fact when it's totally not true. The #1 reason people go to the hospital is because they're on a plant-based diet. They're eating vegan and vegetarian style food. 4 to 10% of all carbon emissions come from the healthcare industry, while only 2% comes from meat, from grazing and animal production. Okay, 2% versus 10%. So if you care about the world, you'll stop being a diabetic type, whatever, fatty liver disease, gout-ridden. You'll be healthy by eating red meat.
Paul, has Lewis convinced you?
No, I mean, there was loads of statistics in there, all unverifiable lies.
Well, we'll check that out. Google us. What percent of carbon emissions come from healthcare?
And all that stuff. I mean, the fact that #1 admissions to hospital is because of plant-based diets.
Yes.
You don't see that in the back of the ambulance on them ambulance shows, do you?
No, because
we've got another vegan. He's down.
Yeah.
Nothing like that. People have got broken legs.
How do you think you got to look like this? How do you think you did?
Well, as much as I'm enjoying this, the show is nearly over, so let's take another quick look at Thursday's front pages. The Daily Mail leads with Labour tearing itself apart on Israel. The Guardian has fears of worsening humanitarian disaster in Gaza as fuel runs short. The Daily Express leads with where's the hope amidst shared grief. The Metro has blackmail sex cop had 210 girl victims. The Daily Mirror has Bulgar killer's parole bid in secret. And the Daily Star has mystic mugs. And those were your front pages. And that's all we have time for. Thank you to my guests, Paul Cox, and some thanks to Lewis Schaefer as well. He was also here and tried his hardest. We're back again tomorrow at 11 p.m. with Josh, Nick and Cresta. If you're watching at 5 a.m, stay tuned for breakfast. Good night.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GBNews.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Wednesday night, and this is Farage at Large, live from Cardiff. Please welcome your host, Nigel Farage.
Good evening, we're live here in Cardiff, where the World Parliament has just banned GB News from their television sets. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about 20-mile-an-hour speed limits. I've got some fresh stuff on debanking ahead tomorrow of the big NatWest board meeting. We've got Welsh stories, national stories, international stories, great guests. Stay with us. First, let's get the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you. Good evening to you. Well, our top story tonight. BBC boss Tim Davie has faced an unprecedented grilling from MPs over the broadcaster's failure to label Hamas as a terrorist organisation. Conservative MPs are understood to have become increasingly concerned over the BBC's coverage of the Israel-Hamas conflict. Today's meeting was requested by the 1922 committee, which represents Conservative backbenchers. Tory MP Jonathan Gullis spoke to GB News after the meeting, saying he was shocked that Tim Davie would not agree to calling Hamas terrorists because it may hurt some people's feelings.
For me, this is mind-boggling. Everyone knows that Hamas is a terrorist organisation. It's a prescribed terrorist organisation here in this country. Every other news agency, like the great GB News, also considers this to be a terrorist organisation. What on earth the Director General thinks is going on, I don't know, but he is so far out of touch with the people of this great country, and particularly the Jewish community, not just here but around the world. He's brought shame upon this institution and has made a case why now more than ever the British taxpayer should have to continue paying the telly tax.
In the meantime, in Israel, the Prime Minister says he's warning his country is preparing for a ground invasion now of Gaza. Benjamin Netanyahu refused to give details of the offensive, but again urged Palestinians in the Gaza Strip to evacuate to the south of the country. That comes as Israel has reportedly agreed to delay its ground invasion to allow the US to place missile defence systems around their assets in the Middle East. Meanwhile, here, the Prime Minister's refusing to support calls for a ceasefire despite pressure from more than 80 MPs to do so. Instead, Rishi Sunak is backing specific pauses, he says, in the conflict to allow for the safe delivery of aid to the territory. 5 British people are among those still being held hostage in Gaza. Now, Peter Bone has been suspended from the House of Commons for 6 weeks over bullying and sexual misconduct of a staff member. The Wellingborough MP denies the allegations but has already been expelled from the Tory party. It means another by-election's looming for Rishi Sunak, as a recall petition will now be arranged. A former South Wales police officer has been jailed for life with a minimum term to serve of 12 years for sexual offences against